Millions know Elon Musk. Few know Gwynne Shotwell, the executive who quietly helped build SpaceX into one of the world's most valuable companies. As SpaceX's value soared, so did her ownership. How did she build a fortune worth millions? And why has her story remained largely untold? When people think of SpaceX, one name dominates every headline: Elon Musk. But every extraordinary company is built by more than one person. Behind the scenes, another leader has played a critical role in turning bold ideas into global success. Meet Gwynne Shotwell, SpaceX's president and chief operating officer. While Musk inspired the vision, Shotwell helped transform that vision into a thriving business. She quietly built partnerships, secured contracts, and helped guide one of the fastest-growing aerospace companies in history. Today, SpaceX launches rockets, deploys satellites, transports astronauts, and develops technologies that continue reshaping the commercial space industry. None of that happened through engineering alone. Every successful mission also required financing, customer relationships, long-term planning, and flawless business execution. Shotwell became known as the executive who could bridge the gap between ambitious engineering and commercial reality. Winning government launch contracts required years of trust, reliability, and consistent performance. Commercial satellite customers brought billions in revenue, helping transform SpaceX from an ambitious startup into a sustainable global business. As the company expanded, another story unfolded quietly in the background. Because SpaceX remained privately owned for many years, its shares were held mainly by founders, investors, and a small group of long-term executives. Among them, Gwynne Shotwell steadily built a significant ownership stake. Unlike public companies, private ownership details are rarely disclosed. That has made the true size of her holdings one of the aerospace industry's most closely watched mysteries. So how did Gwynne Shotwell accumulate millions of SpaceX shares, and what could that hidden stake be worth today? That's the story we'll uncover next. To understand Gwynne Shotwell's fortune, we first need to understand how she became one of SpaceX's earliest and most trusted leaders. Long before SpaceX became a global success, joining the company meant taking a huge risk. Nothing about its future was guaranteed. Before arriving at SpaceX, Shotwell built her career in engineering, technical sales, and aerospace business development. She understood both the science behind space technology and the business required to turn ambitious ideas into successful commercial projects. That rare combination quickly made her one of the company's most valuable executives. As SpaceX expanded, her responsibilities continued growing. She negotiated launch contracts, built relationships with commercial customers, and helped secure partnerships with government agencies. Every successful agreement created new opportunities while strengthening the company's reputation around the world. Like many early employees at successful technology companies, Shotwell's compensation included company equity. Instead of relying only on salary, she received ownership in a business whose value would eventually increase far beyond anyone's expectations. As SpaceX achieved technical milestones and attracted new investors, its valuation climbed dramatically. Even a relatively small ownership percentage became worth an extraordinary amount as the company's overall value continued rising year after year. Private company shares are very different from publicly traded stock. They cannot always be bought or sold freely, and ownership information is usually kept confidential. Because SpaceX remained privately held for many years, the exact size of Shotwell's stake has never been fully disclosed. Even so, public reports indicate that she owns millions of SpaceX shares, making her one of the company's largest individual shareholders. Analysts use reported share counts and company valuations to estimate what those holdings could be worth today. The results are remarkable. They suggest Gwynne Shotwell may quietly rank among the wealthiest executives in the global aerospace industry. But how valuable are those millions of shares today? In the next chapter, we'll separate verified facts from reasonable estimates to uncover the true scale of her hidden fortune. Now comes the biggest question. How much could Gwynne Shotwell's SpaceX ownership actually be worth? The answer is more complicated than many people expect. The first step is separating verified facts from reasonable estimates. SpaceX remained a private company for most of its history, so it never published a complete breakdown of executive share ownership. Unlike public corporations, private companies reveal very little about compensation, equity, or individual shareholder positions. Because of that, analysts estimate executive wealth using publicly reported company valuations, private funding rounds, secondary market transactions, and historical ownership information. As each funding round increased SpaceX's valuation, the value of every existing share also increased, even though the total number of shares remained the same. That is one of the most powerful advantages of long-term ownership. In a company valued in the hundreds of billions or even trillions of dollars, a relatively small ownership stake can become worth an extraordinary fortune. What we do know is that Gwynne Shotwell has spent decades helping build SpaceX. She joined the company during its early years, remained through its biggest challenges, and played a central role in its commercial success. Like many long-serving executives, she is widely believed to have received equity that rewarded years of leadership and commitment. The exact number of shares she owns has never been officially confirmed. Some reports mention millions of shares, but those figures should be viewed as estimates unless supported by official company disclosures. That uncertainty is one reason private company ownership often attracts so much attention from investors and financial analysts. Even without precise numbers, one conclusion is clear. Her ownership reflects decades of helping transform SpaceX into one of the world's most valuable aerospace companies. To understand the true scale of her potential fortune, we now need to examine the company's extraordinary valuation. Because once SpaceX's market value enters the equation, the numbers behind executive ownership become truly astonishing. Executive equity becomes truly valuable only when the company behind it grows dramatically. For SpaceX, that transformation happened faster than almost anyone expected. What began as an ambitious startup eventually became one of the world's most valuable aerospace companies. In the early years, success was far from certain. Every rocket launch tested not only new technology, but the company's future. Each successful mission increased confidence among customers, investors, and government agencies. Every achievement made the next opportunity possible. One breakthrough changed everything. Reusable rockets dramatically lowered the cost of spaceflight by allowing expensive boosters to fly again, instead of being discarded after every mission. Lower costs and more frequent launches strengthened investor confidence and expanded SpaceX's commercial potential. The company reached another milestone by safely transporting astronauts into space. That success proved private companies could perform missions once handled only by national space agencies. At the same time, the rapidly growing satellite internet business created an entirely new source of long-term revenue and strategic value. As these achievements accumulated, investor confidence continued rising. Every funding round valued SpaceX more highly than the last. As the company's valuation increased, the value of existing shares also climbed dramatically. Long-term shareholders saw their paper wealth multiply without buying a single additional share. Throughout this remarkable journey, Gwynne Shotwell remained one of the company's most important leaders. She continued securing commercial contracts, building customer relationships, and helping guide SpaceX through years of extraordinary expansion. Her long-term equity likely increased in value alongside the company's remarkable growth. But valuable shares are not the same as cash. Private company ownership often comes with restrictions that limit when and how shares can be sold. That means even fortunes worth hundreds of millions or potentially billions may remain largely inaccessible for years. In the next chapter, we'll explore why liquidity matters just as much as ownership, and why even enormous paper fortunes cannot always be spent when shareholders want. A headline may suggest someone is worth billions, but that doesn't mean billions are sitting in a personal bank account. Most executive wealth exists on paper, tied directly to the value of company shares they continue to own. The same principle applies to Gwynne Shotwell. Her estimated net worth depends largely on the value of her SpaceX ownership rather than cash. Because SpaceX remains a private company, those shares cannot usually be sold whenever a shareholder chooses. Instead, private companies often organize carefully managed tender offers that allow approved shareholders to sell limited portions of their equity. These structured transactions help maintain stable ownership while reducing sudden selling that could affect investor confidence. Even when shares are sold, taxes, transaction costs, and financial planning all influence how much money shareholders ultimately receive. Many experienced executives gradually diversify their investments rather than keeping all of their wealth tied to a single company. At the same time, retaining significant ownership keeps executive interests aligned with the company's long-term success. If SpaceX's valuation rises, estimated wealth increases. If the company's value falls, estimated net worth can decline just as quickly even without selling a single share. Patient ownership has often produced the greatest financial rewards, especially when exceptional businesses continue growing over many years. Any estimate of executive wealth reflects only one moment in time, not a permanently fixed financial reality. Gwynne Shotwell's story is about far more than personal wealth. It is about helping build one of the world's most influential aerospace companies. If SpaceX continues expanding through future launch systems, satellite services, and new commercial opportunities, the value of existing ownership could continue evolving. Next, we'll look beyond the numbers to understand why Gwynne Shotwell's leadership may ultimately prove even more valuable than her estimated fortune. Money tells only part of Gwynne Shotwell's story. Her greatest contribution may be the company she has helped build over decades. Designing rockets is only half the challenge. Building a sustainable aerospace business requires an entirely different set of skills. Every commercial launch begins with negotiations that can take months or even years before a rocket ever leaves the launch pad. SpaceX works with governments, commercial customers, and international partners, making trusted relationships essential to the company's success. Industry leaders have often described Shotwell as a calm and respected executive capable of managing exceptionally complex business relationships. Successful missions depend on engineering, manufacturing, logistics, regulatory approvals, customer coordination, and flawless operational execution working together. Each successful launch strengthens customer confidence, leading to repeat contracts that support continued growth and long-term stability. Throughout years of rapid expansion, Shotwell became known for steady leadership during both major achievements and operational challenges. Managing an organization of this scale requires coordinating thousands of employees, suppliers, customers, and engineering teams across multiple programs. Strong execution builds investor confidence, helping increase company value and strengthening the long-term importance of executive ownership. No single leader builds a company alone. Lasting success comes from thousands of talented people working toward one shared mission. The commercial space industry continues transforming communications, science, exploration, and global connectivity around the world. Years from now, leadership decisions may prove far more important than temporary estimates of personal wealth. As SpaceX continues expanding, both Gwynne Shotwell's influence and the value of her ownership may continue evolving. Next, we'll explore what the future could realistically hold for her SpaceX shares as the company's next chapter begins. No one can predict the future with certainty, but we can examine the factors most likely to influence the long-term value of SpaceX ownership. Future valuation will depend on business performance, technological execution, customer demand, competition, and broader economic conditions, not on headlines alone. For long-term executives like Gwynne Shotwell, the value of existing equity remains closely tied to the company's continued success. If launch activity keeps expanding and commercial demand remains strong, investors may continue viewing SpaceX as an increasingly valuable business. The growth of satellite internet services could also strengthen future revenue while supporting long-term investor confidence. Future spacecraft development may unlock entirely new commercial opportunities, although every major technological milestone carries meaningful uncertainty. Additional private funding rounds could establish new valuation benchmarks, while future liquidity events may allow some shareholders to sell portions of their holdings under company policies. A public listing is often discussed by analysts, but no timeline or outcome should be treated as certain unless officially announced. Long-term ownership continues aligning executive incentives with the company's future performance and sustained innovation. Just as valuations can rise, they can also decline if business results or market expectations change. Responsible financial analysis considers multiple scenarios instead of assuming only the most optimistic outcome. History shows that aerospace companies create lasting value over decades, making patience one of the most important ingredients behind extraordinary success. For Gwynne Shotwell, the future will likely be measured less by headlines and more by consistent execution, disciplined leadership, and continued innovation. Ultimately, every estimated fortune reflects years of engineering, calculated risk, and thousands of people working together toward ambitious goals. In our final chapter, we'll separate verified facts from speculation and explore what Gwynne Shotwell's remarkable story ultimately teaches us about leadership, ownership, and long-term value creation. After examining the facts, one conclusion becomes clear. Gwynne Shotwell's story is about far more than extraordinary personal wealth. For decades, she helped transform bold engineering ambitions into a sustainable, world-leading aerospace business while remaining largely outside the public spotlight. As SpaceX evolved from an ambitious startup into one of the world's most influential private companies, long-term ownership naturally became far more valuable. Some aspects of her financial position are publicly documented, while others remain informed estimates. Responsible analysis means recognizing that distinction instead of treating every estimate as certainty. That's why this documentary focused on verified information, reasonable analysis, and transparency rather than unsupported speculation. Her career demonstrates that transformative leadership doesn't always belong to the most recognizable public figure. Often, lasting success is built by leaders working consistently behind the scenes. Behind every successful rocket launch stands an extraordinary team of engineers, technicians, manufacturers, and business leaders whose combined expertise turns ambitious ideas into reliable missions. Long-term ownership reflects far more than financial reward. It represents years of commitment, responsibility, and confidence in a company's future. Whether measured through leadership, operational excellence, or estimated ownership, Gwynne Shotwell has helped shape one of the defining success stories in modern aerospace. Her journey shows that the greatest achievements rarely happen overnight. They are built through disciplined execution, continuous innovation, and patient long-term thinking. As SpaceX continues pursuing even more ambitious goals, its next chapter may prove just as remarkable as its first 2 decades. Sometimes history is shaped not by the loudest voices, but by the steady leaders who quietly build the future. Perhaps that's Gwynne Shotwell's greatest achievement, not simply owning part of SpaceX, but helping build a company that transformed an entire industry and continues inspiring the next generation of innovators.